One moment she was yelling, the next instant regret.
Diane Mercer prided herself on being a woman who knew her rights. At 48, with her highlighted bob haircut and designer sunglasses perched precisely on her nose, she navigated her pristine white Lexus SUV through the crowded parking lot of the Springfield Farmers Market. It was 9:30 a.m. on a perfect Saturday in May, prime shopping time. After circling twice, she spotted a space near the entrance and swooped in triumphantly, ignoring the fact that half her vehicle now blocked a loading zone clearly marked for vendors with bold yellow stripes and prominent signage. Diane checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, applied another coat of her signature coral lipstick, and gathered her designer tote bag. The farmers market had become increasingly popular over the past year, which Diane found both validating. She'd been shopping here before it was trendy, and irritating. Too many amateurs clogging the aisles. She stepped out of her vehicle in her crisp white linen pants and turquoise blouse, the perfect outfit for a morning of selecting organic produce that she would photograph for her modest but growing Instagram following. She was reaching for her phone when a young man in a dirt-smudged apron approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," said Miguel, his voice polite but firm. "You're blocking our loading zone. We need to bring in 3 more crates of produce, and your car is making it impossible to access our stall." Miguel, at 24, had been helping at his family's organic vegetable stand since he was tall enough to reach the table. He'd dealt with difficult customers before, but something about the way this woman looked at him, as if he were an inconvenience rather than a person, made him brace himself for what was coming. Diane's response was immediate and fierce. Her pleasant expression vanished, replaced by narrowed eyes and a tight-lipped scowl. "Do you know how long I've been coming to this market?" she demanded, voice rising with each word. "I've been shopping here for over 10 years. I'm friends with the owner," she lied, though the market was actually run by a community cooperative with no single owner. "I'll only be 30 minutes, and there were no other spaces available." Miguel gestured toward the general parking area across the street. "There's plenty of parking in the public lot, ma'am. It's only a short walk." "A short walk? With all my purchases? In this heat?" Diane's voice climbed another decibel. "Though the morning was a pleasant 68 degrees. I don't think you understand who you're talking to. I spend hundreds of dollars here every month." By now, her voice had drawn attention. A small crowd had begun to gather, including several regular vendors who exchanged knowing glances. This wasn't the first entitled shopper they'd encountered, but Diane was putting on a particularly impressive performance. "I need to speak with whoever's in charge here," she demanded, stabbing her manicured finger in the air for emphasis. As she continued her tirade, Maria Espinoza, a young woman waiting to order coffee from a nearby stand, quietly took out her phone and began recording. Beside her, an older gentleman did the same. Within moments, 3 more phones were raised, capturing Diane's meltdown from multiple angles. Diane was too focused on her righteous indignation to notice, unaware that her performance was about to reach a much wider audience than the startled onlookers at the market. She had no idea that her Saturday morning shopping trip was about to change her life in ways she couldn't imagine. By early afternoon, Maria Espinoza's TikTok post of Diane's meltdown had already garnered 12,000 views. By dinner time, it had exploded to over 50,000 across multiple platforms as screenshots and clips circulated through Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook community groups. The hashtag Farmers Market Karen was trending locally, with Springfield residents eagerly sharing and commenting on the dramatic scene. The 3-minute video captured far more than Diane's initial outburst. As Miguel had attempted to continue setting up his family's stall around her vehicle, Diane had grown increasingly agitated. The footage clearly showed her gesturing wildly, accidentally on purpose knocking over a meticulously arranged display of organic heirloom tomatoes. A satisfying splat of perfectly ripe tomatoes hitting the pavement was followed by audible gasps from onlookers. "Now look what you made me do," Diane had exclaimed, somehow blaming Miguel for her own actions. The young vendor's face remained admirably composed as he knelt to salvage what produce he could, though the camera caught the slight trembling of his hands. What viewers found most satisfying, the moment that had earned the video its viral status, came at the 2:34 mark. After declaring loudly that she would never shop here again, and that they had lost a valuable customer, Diane had stormed back toward her Lexus, designer tote swinging wildly from her arm. The camera followed her righteous exit, only to capture her stop dead in her tracks. A large delivery truck had pulled up directly behind her SUV, effectively boxing her in. The market manager, Alina Gomes, a calm, silver-haired woman in her 60s who had been running the market for nearly 2 decades, stood nearby with a clipboard. Alina's weathered face revealed nothing but professional courtesy. The viewers swore they could detect the slightest hint of satisfaction in her eyes. "You're parked illegally in our loading zone, ma'am," Alina explained, her voice steady and clear in the video. "I'm afraid this delivery will take about an hour to unload. I'm happy to call a tow truck if you prefer. Otherwise, you're welcome to wait. The camera caught Diane's face cycling through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally the dawning realization that she had no good options. The comment section below the video was filled with gleeful observations. The way her face just drove peak when she saw that truck. Elena is my new hero. That clipboard energy. Watch it at 0.5 speed to really enjoy the moment she realizes actions have consequences. As someone who works in customer service, this is TGDRAPUTIC. By nightfall, local news stations had picked up the story, with one journalist already reaching out to Miguel's family and the market organizers for comment. Several viewers had identified Diane from her community involvement and workplace, tagging her employer in posts sharing the video. Across town in her tastefully decorated living room, Diane sat alone on her white leather sofa, staring in horror at her phone as notification after notification pinged. Her social media accounts were flooding with messages, some from strangers, others, more disturbingly, from acquaintances and coworkers. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the comments, the full weight of her public humiliation beginning to sink in. Diane had no idea that among the thousands of viewers of her viral moment was her boss, Harold Winters. As the HR director at Meadowbrook Financial Services, a mid-sized financial consulting firm that emphasized community relations in its marketing, Harold had spent Sunday evening scrolling through his neighborhood Facebook group when the video appeared on his feed. With growing dismay, he recognized his employee of 8 years berating local business owners and knocking over their merchandise. Harold, a methodical man who believed in proper procedures, took several screenshots and forwarded the video link to CEO Victoria Chen with a brief message. "We may have a situation that requires attention. One of our employees has gone viral for the wrong reasons." Monday morning arrived with a humid heaviness that matched Diane's mood. She had seriously considered calling in sick, but decided that hiding would only make things worse. Perhaps, she reasoned as she applied extra concealer to hide her sleepless night, people at work might not have seen the video. Springfield was a decent-sized city after all. Her hope evaporated the moment she stepped off the elevator onto the 14th floor. Conversations hushed as she walked past cubicles, followed by the unmistakable sound of whispers resuming in her wake. Her assistant Angela, normally chatty and eager to discuss weekend activities, handed Diane her messages with uncharacteristic efficiency before hurrying back to her desk. At 10:15 a.m., a calendar invitation appeared on Diane's screen. Meeting with Harold Winters and Victoria Chen. Conference Room B. 10:30 a.m., her stomach clenched as she accepted the invitation. Conference Room B was the one they used for serious conversations, terminations, restructuring announcements, and delicate HR matters. The room's glass walls had privacy film installed halfway up, allowing those inside to see out while preventing others from looking in. As Diane approached, she saw Harold and Victoria already seated, faces professionally neutral. "Diane, thank you for joining us." Victoria began after Diane had taken a seat across from them. At 52, Victoria had built Meadowbrook from a small consultancy to a respected regional firm, and her sleek gray bob and impeccable suit projected the competence their wealthy clients expected. "I'll get straight to the point," she continued, sliding an iPad across the table. On the screen was a pause image from the farmer's market video, Diane's face contorted in anger, finger pointing accusingly at Miguel. "This video has been brought to our attention by several sources, including 3 clients." Harold leaned forward. "As you know, Meadowbrook's reputation is built on community trust and respect. Our mission statement specifically emphasizes ethical conduct, both professionally and personally." "We're not here to judge what happened at the market," Victoria added, though her expression suggested otherwise. "But we do need to address the impact this is having on our company image. The video identifies you as a Meadowbrook employee in several comment threads." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, professional and measured, but the message was devastatingly clear. Diane's viral moment directly contradicted the company's values of respect and community support. They have received 2 email complaints from high-net-worth clients who recognize her as their financial advisor. "We're offering you a choice," Harold explained, sliding a folder across the table. "Option 1 is resignation with 2 months severance and a neutral reference. Option 2 is termination for conduct unbecoming a Meadowbrook employee." Diane stared at the folder, the room suddenly spinning slightly. "May I have some time to think about this?" "Of course," Victoria replied. "You have until noon." By lunchtime, Diane was clearing out her desk, having chosen resignation. She told herself it was unrelated to the weekend's misunderstanding, that she had been considering a career change anyway, that Meadowbrook was overreacting to maintain their precious image. But as she placed her personal items in a cardboard box, watched silently by colleagues who suddenly found reasons to walk past her office, the weight of consequences began to settle on her shoulders. 2 weeks after her resignation, Diane was still adjusting to her new reality. Countless job applications had gone unanswered, and she suspected her now infamous name was tripping alarm bells for potential employers. The severance from Meadowbrook provided temporary financial stability, but the social isolation was beginning to wear on her. Former colleagues had stopped responding to her messages, and several acquaintances had made excuses to cancel plans. When Patricia Lawson, her friend of 15 years and fellow self-described customer service enthusiast, suggested lunch at Botanica, a trendy new farm-to-table bistro downtown, Diane jumped at the chance for human connection. Patricia, at 52, shared Diane's expectations for service and appreciation for the finer things, though her approach was typically more subtle than Diane's direct confrontations. "You've been through absolute hell," Patricia sympathized as they were seated at a window table with a view of the restaurant's herb garden. What Meadowbrook did was completely unfair. Anyone can have a bad day. Diane felt herself relax for the first time in weeks. "Thank you. You're literally the only person who's been supportive through all this. Everyone else is acting like I committed some terrible crime." The restaurant buzzed with Wednesday lunch crowd energy, professionals on their breaks and ladies who lunch punctuating the atmosphere with laughter and conversation. Their server, Zoe, a college student working part-time, approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to Botanica. My name is Zoe, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Patricia ordered a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, while Diane requested sparkling water with lime. Zoe returned promptly with their drinks and took their lunch orders, Patricia choosing the bistro steak with roasted vegetables, requesting it well done, while Diane selected a kale Caesar salad with grilled chicken. The conversation flowed easily as they waited for their food, Patricia updating Diane on neighborhood gossip and commiserating about her job situation. When Zoe returned with their meals 30 minutes later, both women paused their conversation to assess the plates placed before them. Patricia cut into her steak immediately, her expression shifting from anticipation to displeasure as she examined the meat's interior. Though brown throughout with no pink visible, it wasn't quite the charred consistency she preferred. "Excuse me," she called to Zoe, who was serving a nearby table. When the young woman approached, Patricia's tone had cooled considerably. "This steak is undercooked. I asked for well done." Zoe leaned in to examine the steak. "I'm so sorry about that. It does look well done to me. But if it's not to your satisfaction, I'd be happy to have the kitchen prepare a new one." "This is ridiculous," Patricia said, her voice rising dramatically. "I shouldn't have to wait another 20 minutes because you can't get a simple order right. I want to speak to the manager, and I want our entire meal comped." Diane, feeling a surge of loyalty and perhaps sensing an opportunity to share in her friend's righteous indignation, chimed in. "The service here has gone downhill completely. We're regular customers," though this was her first visit to the restaurant that had only opened 3 months prior. Neither woman noticed the man at the next table, quietly filming their exchange on his phone. Jason Wong, a local food blogger with a modest but engaged following, had been documenting his Botanica experience when the commotion began. His followers particularly enjoyed his restaurant behavior series highlighting both exemplary and poor customer conduct. As Patricia's complaints escalated and Diane joined in, Jason continued recording, already composing captions in his mind. "Let me get my manager for you right away," Zoe said with admirable professionalism, retreating to the kitchen area where Marco Alvarez was overseeing the lunch service. Marco, at 35, had worked his way up from dishwasher to restaurant manager over 15 years in the industry. He prided himself on his conflict resolution skills and commitment to staff morale. When Zoe explained the situation, he nodded calmly and followed her back to the dining area. "Good afternoon, ladies. I'm Marco Alvarez, the manager. I understand there's an issue with your steak," he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Patricia launched into her complaint again, with Diane adding supportive comments about standards slipping and basic customer service. Marco listened attentively, nodding at appropriate intervals, his eyes scanning both women as they spoke. When his gaze settled on Diane, something flickered in his expression, a flash of recognition that was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "I apologize for the inconvenience," he said when they finished. "I'd be happy to have the kitchen prepare something else for you or offer a complimentary dessert for your trouble." What he said next, however, caught both women entirely off guard. "But first," Marco continued, his tone shifting subtly from apologetic to curious, "aren't you the woman from the farmer's market video? The one who knocked over all those tomatoes?" He snapped his fingers as if suddenly remembering. "Yes. What a coincidence. Our chef Miguel's cousin works at that market. He sent us the video last week during staff meal, and we were all just talking about it this morning." The color drained from Diane's face as the connection dawned on her. Around them, the lunch buzz dimmed as nearby diners began to notice the interaction. A few whispers of farmer's market lady floated across the restaurant, and several phones were subtly raised, ready to capture whatever might happen next. Patricia looked between Marco and Diane, confusion evident on her face. "What video?" Diane, what is he talking about? There seems to be some mistake, Diane managed, her voice suddenly small. I don't know what you're referring to. No mistake, Marco said pleasantly, pulling out his own phone and quickly finding the video. He turned the screen toward Patricia, who watched with growing discomfort as her lunch companion's previous public meltdown played out in miniature on the device. That's definitely you, isn't it? By now, the nearest tables have fallen completely silent, diners openly watching the scene unfold. Jason Wong, the food blogger, continued filming discreetly, capturing Diane's mortification in real time. And now you're both in my restaurant creating another scene, Marco continued, his tone remaining conversational though his eyes had hardened. The farmer's market incident was unfortunate, but everyone deserves a second chance. However, it seems like you're making a habit of this behavior. He gestured to their table where their barely touched meals sat cooling. I think it might be best if you paid for what you've consumed so far and found somewhere else to dine today. We want all our guests to have a pleasant experience, including our staff. Patricia began gathering her things immediately, avoiding eye contact with surrounding diners. This is outrageous, she muttered, though her protests lacked conviction. Diane sat frozen, a second public humiliation unfolding around her in the space of 2 weeks. The room seemed to spin slightly as she realized that her actions at the farmer's market weren't an isolated incident to be forgotten, but rather the beginning of a reputation that would follow her throughout the community. A month after the restaurant debacle, Diane sat in her apartment scrolling through job listings. The severance package from Meadowbrook was dwindling, and her savings wouldn't sustain her lifestyle indefinitely. Several promising interviews had ended with vague rejections, and one hiring manager had even obliquely referenced cultural fit concerns while glancing meaningfully at her computer screen where Diane suspected the infamous video was minimized. She needed to rehabilitate her image to show the community she was more than those 2 unfortunate moments captured on camera. When she received the Neighborhood Association's monthly email newsletter announcing a public meeting to discuss local business district improvements, Diane saw an opportunity. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at the Springfield Community Center, a renovated Victorian building that served as the heart of the neighborhood's civic activities. Diane spent extra time on her appearance, selecting a conservative navy blazer and minimal makeup, a deliberate departure from her usual polished look. She arrived early to secure a seat in the middle rows, not too prominent but visible enough to be noticed when she spoke. The meeting room filled gradually with a cross-section of Springfield residents, small business owners, young professionals, retirees, and families. Diane recognized several people, including Elena Gomes, the farmer's market manager, who was chatting with the Neighborhood Association president near the podium. Elena glanced in Diane's direction, her expression registering brief surprise before returning to polite neutrality. The meeting proceeded through routine business matters, budget approvals, committee reports, announcements about upcoming community events. When the agenda turned to new business, the association president introduced a discussion about parking violations in local business districts. As many of you know, we've had increasing complaints about parking issues, particularly around the farmers market and the downtown shopping district, he explained. We're looking for community input on potential solutions before taking recommendations to the city council. Several attendees offered suggestions: increased signage, higher fines for violations, more frequent patrols by parking enforcement. Diane listened attentively, mentally rehearsing her comments. When the discussion seemed to be winding down, she raised her hand and was acknowledged. Standing with deliberately perfect posture, Diane adopted her most reasonable, community-minded tone. Thank you for raising this important issue. I think we need better signage and perhaps some educational outreach, she suggested as she felt dozens of eyes on her. Sometimes it's not clear where parking is and isn't permitted, especially for visitors to our neighborhood. Perhaps be cold. Excuse me, interrupted Walter Jenkins, a silver-haired retired teacher seated 2 rows ahead. He half-turned in his seat to look directly at Diane. Aren't you the lady from those videos? The parking space one at the farmer's market and that scene at Botanica restaurant. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Diane. She felt her face grow hot but forced herself to maintain eye contact with Walter. Yes, I was involved in an unfortunate misunderstanding at the market, she acknowledged, trying to salvage her dignity. So you're the one who knocked over Miguel Ramirez's tomato display and blocked vendor access. Walter pressed, his tone deceptively mild. And then had another incident at Botanica. From the back of the room, someone called out, I think you're the last person who should be giving opinions on parking regulations, followed by scattered laughter that quickly spread through the room.